I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hornady Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Swerczek, and today I've got some special guests all the way from Oregon. We've got the VP of Marketing and New Products, Tim Lesser, and we've got the Director of Engineering, Dr. Dustin Miller, all the way from Leupold. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We were joking before the podcast started here. You come out to central Nebraska. There's not a whole lot to do out in central Nebraska, but you come see this island, the Grand Island, as it were, surrounded by corn this time of year, and there's plenty of shooting going on, and to see the factory has to be really cool. Now, I've been to your facility out there in Beaverton and saw a bunch of hardworking Americans making rifle scopes, and that's pretty darn cool. What did you guys think of the Hornady factories that you got to see here?
It's awesome, right? So I had been through it once before. It's changed a lot since the last time I was here. Obviously, you're investing in trying to make sure that you're getting better every day. That's one of the characteristics that we have as well. Factories in some way, shape, or form kind of all look the same, but they're all very unique. They do. There's something about that machine oil. But it strikes me each time that I'm out here. You go through and just the scale and the precision, and those don't normally go hand in hand. How do you get something where you can get mass quantity and still hold the tolerance as you guys do? That's the thing from my chair to see that at this type of a scale while holding the level of quality that you do is phenomenal, and it makes me really happy.
That's great to hear, and high praise coming from a man that sits where you do within Leupold. And as the Director of Engineering, Dustin, you look at a factory probably through a different lens.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have to resist the temptation to turn knobs when I'm out there on the floor and that type of thing,
see what's going on.
But I mean, this was the first time going through the factory for myself, right, and seeing everything that you do. And I was reflecting on that after going through, and really just Hornady last names in the company title, right? Leupold and Stevens in there, and just how similar we are, being a family-based company, doing so much in American manufacturing, and the level of investment that Tim had mentioned as well, right? Clearly, spending a lot of money to continue that privilege of manufacturing here, keeping up, right, and being at the top of your game. And we're doing the same thing, right? There's always machines coming in the building, investing in engineering talent in my team to make our products better day in and day out, but really just striving to be dominant, be as perfect as we can in our product line.
Yeah.
So,
well, you mentioned in there a lot of similarities between Leupold and Hornady, and I think one of the biggest similarities that the average consumer won't quite appreciate, they just don't get it, but I think one of the biggest similarities between these two companies is when you get down to the individual employee at the company, what you find is somebody who really, really uses the product. And we talk about that, when we have, like, say, Jaden Quinlan on the show, me, Preston, some of the guys that are staples on our show, they grew up hunting and shooting. That is what they do. And if they worked anywhere else, they're still hunting and shooting. And I know that's alive and well at Leupold. So before we get into this Q&A, because we did send out put up the bat signal for our listeners, send us in some questions. And I got some questions for you, but I think it's going to be useful for our listener to know what your background is, what qualifies you to be a expert in this field. And I think they'll see, just like everywhere else in this industry, you do this because it's what you do. And that's pretty cool. So Tim, I'll start with you. What were, Tim out running amok, shooting stuff, and how'd you get into the industry?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people grew up hunting, shooting, fishing, all of those things, and going with my dad and learning what to do, what not to do.
Right.
We had a lot of time not finding stuff in Western Washington. My dad was originally from Wyoming. We still have roots there. And so when it was time for me to go off to college, I went to University of Wyoming, and I had family out there, started guiding hunters.
Yeah, buddy.
And that was pretty cool, for me to go out there and you can get paid to hunt, basically. So started deer, elk, antelope, kind of the big three there.
Staples of Wyoming culture.
Yep. And, just being out there guiding 100, 150 days a year gets you some real insights. And what I can tell you, from there, when I went to go work at Leupold, I was kind of thinking, I've got some pretty good experience here.
Right.
And man, I'm glad I didn't speak up very much because I was about noon on day one before I realized I was in over my head. That entire building eats, sleeps, and breathes being out hunting, shooting, doing other stuff. And so I got to start in a really good spot. It was in our technical service team. So now you're getting every question from how do you pronounce the brand, sometimes settling bar bets or something else on a Friday afternoon, to, okay, when something goes transonic, what's happening there? How do you account for this? And those are things that you just don't run into when you're out in the elk woods or something.
Right.
And so being kind of immersed in that, I was always curious with the why. Not what is the answer, but why is that the answer? And that kind of natural curiosity led me into product development. And so over the course of, I've been there 22, 23 years now.
Wow.
Started in tech service, answering questions, licking, stamps, we were still hand wrote envelopes and mailed catalogs when I started. And then just kind of worked my way up through that, through the marketing team, and then into product development. And now I'm fortunate to work on what I think is the two most fun areas, right? We get to develop the new stuff, and then we get to figure out how to talk about it.
Yeah, that's what I love about marketing. You don't actually have to sell anything. You just have to make people want to use it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fun to be in. And I can attest that being in the new product development side of anything, what a fun place to be.
It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, a lifelong hunter and shooter, and somebody that's still super passionate about that, a competitor, a hunter, and that's what drives you. And it's very evident, getting to know you. And I think that's huge for our listener to understand that at these big companies, they might see, they open a catalog, you get the Shields fall pursuit catalog, whatever, and there's, Leupold in there, and they just assume this is this big corporate brand. But when you get down to the individual is a hunter and a shooter, and that's very important.
And it never changes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's still, when we get a minute off, a weekend, our season opens in just a few days here for archery. Every minute we can be out in the field with our family or with coworkers, we're out, right?
Yep.
And so
again, a super parallel to Hornady, and you guys were here of all of like 15 minutes, and we were talking about your daughter shooting her first elk, Dustin. So,
That's right, yep.
What's your past look like as far as hunting and shooting, and how'd you grow up getting into the industry?
Yeah, I grew up doing it. Lived up in a cabin in the woods with no electricity in the Pacific Northwest in the Cascade Mountains, and eventually came along and was introduced to hunting through some family friends, basically cattlemen that were out there and landowners. And right from the start, it was, hey, what scope should I put on this rifle? And it was, there's really no other option. Leupold is the best, and they're right down the road.
Yeah, it's a hometown team.
Right? And so really kind of shot Leupold scopes, chased around blacktail. It was a great area right in the mountains between Western Oregon, Washington. It was right on the border between Oregon and Washington and the east side. So if I looked on the left side of the road, there was blacktail, and if I looked on the right side of the road, there was mule deer. And then there was elk running around all there in the mountains as well. So
what a bad place to be.
Yeah,
it's a great area.
Eventually went off and went to school and did engineering. And, the first thought coming out of engineering school was, man, where could I use this? And one of the first thoughts was, it'd be really cool to combine all my passions together and work at Leupold and Stevens. So had kind of looked at that, went off to grad school and doing some other things, and then did tech. And I kind of always kept tabs on what are opportunities to eventually bring me here. And about 4 years ago, Tim gave me the opportunity to come to Leupold and hired me into this position. And it's just been fantastic. It's the dream job, right? To be able to continue doing this, to talk about scopes every day. I just pinch myself that, wow, they get to, they pay me to do this type of thing. Like, good thing they don't know I just do this for free in my spare time anyways.
They could pay you in free goods and
right.
give you a couple of days off to actually go hunting, and you'd be happy.
But yeah, just, continue that passion. It's great that we're in the spot that we are. And there's so many people around us, right, that really enjoy and have that passion. We talk about field savvy as being one of our core principles in the company and values that we have. And so it's encouraged. I love taking out some of my engineering team, that's maybe shot before but never hunted, right? We try to get out there and do that, just some self-guided things. Go out and go down to California, shoot pigs, or, we bring the product out there, we test it of what's in development, right? So, we have a lot of personal investment in making sure that it works well, right, and works right, and we want it to work on our hunts. period, right?
Yeah, you're
everybody
the
else
user.
just gets the benefit of that same passion, right, that we have. So
Couldn't have said it better myself. That sentiment has been echoed on this podcast about Hornady employees at developing products because I need the product. So, everybody else can have it too, but I'm making it for me. That's another great story. And yeah, you get into this. It's just Americana, growing up, hunting, shooting, immersing yourself in it, and then pairing that together professionally is just awesome. So with that, I feel like that you guys passed the sniff test of having some credibility.
Oh, we're in.
For
All
these
right, we made it.
questions. Well, and he's got a doctorate, so I wasn't going to not give him the pass. So
I was on the line. I'm questionable.
Tim, and you're still questionable. But
that's fair. That's
the
okay.
doctor's
Trust your
in,
instincts.
as they say. So we're going to start off with some questions, and I appreciate our listener because they really flooded us with questions. And so what I tried to do was categorize the similar questions, and then I had to pick out a person to ask the question. But I tried to pare down just a handful, let's say a dozen of them, and there were way more than a dozen, several dozen, but a lot of them came back to some of these core questions. So I'm going to start with that. This one from around the globe. This guy writes in, he said, "Hi Seth, we love your episodes, especially the technical ones. And I'm stoked to hear that you will have a podcast about optics. This guy is an optometrist and an optical engineer. So all the way from Germany, Moritz Wind, he writes in, he wrote some of the questions. I'm going to read this one and then pare it down for you. He wrote in camera optics, it's totally normal to get objective metrics for image quality, like MTF, Strel ratio, wave front runner, etc. And they can be calculated with optics programs that manufacturers use for their optical design. Why does everybody in the rifle scope world, why does everybody still talk about light transmission percentages and quote-unquote high contrast optics instead of using actual numbers of image metrics that could be compared? More so, this is the paraphrasing part from 18 million other people that had this question. How is glass tested, evaluated, coded, and I'm going to throw in glare into there as well because that's something that I think is also addressed in this question.
Yeah, I love that question from an optical engineer and a listener, right? Obviously passionate about the industry. Hey, if you want to come to Leupold and find out, we could use talent like that on the team. But I love coming in hot, right? With really in depth and someone that clearly understands optics, right, and wanting to know more about it.
He does, because wave front runner to me sounds like something you'd put on the water in Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, in terms of those parameters, right, they're all items that are used, right? So our optical engineers design the optical prescription in-house. They're calculating these types of parameters in addition to many others, right, that help try to explain how that optical performance will work. We go manufacture those, we bring it back into our lab and build up a prototype, right? And we'll test individual lenses before we put everything together and compare a lot of those parameters that he mentioned from NTF and Strel ratio, wavefront error. They're usually parameters that are like a comparative, so they're a ratio, right, of, hey, what would be perfect in terms of, where the design is and where does that lens kind of fall within that and how much distortion might there be when different types of light travel through a lens. It's really hard to explain all of those. So when we do that, even our optical engineers will be arguing about that. Like, what do those parameters mean? How does that translate into performance of the optic at the end of the day? And then also, what do those parameters mean to your eyeball? Because that's the last optical system.
Yeah, that's the ultimate test.
That's
right,
the sensor,
is the test, right? So, like in camera, it's very different, right? You're creating all those optics. There's nothing past that, and you have a sensor, and that sensor doesn't care. It doesn't have an opinion. It's the same, right? It doesn't have an opinion. But my eyeballs are different than yours, and yours, Tim, right? So, some of those make sense in terms of to an optical engineer. But, I mean, that leads to basically the answer to the question, which is, how would those and many of the other parameters, how would somebody actually use those? Because you might need an optical degree, like this person, to even start to even argue about what those parameters mean. Yeah. And it's really hard to kind of deliver that message, right? Okay. So breaking those down right at the end of the day, we've optimized some of those. And even in some cases where you try to like maximize, make this perfect, it actually will look maybe not as good to your eyeball, which is really interesting.
So you could max out all of the Wavefront Runner and the Strail and the MTF or whatever. You could optimize those, but by the time you put your eye up to it, your eye goes, no.
Yeah, you're right. We've done things to make things, like the field that's presented to you that focuses on the back part of your eye. Make it try to look really good, and then you put your eye behind it, and you're like, this just kind of looks weird. Like it's not natural, right? Because the light that's coming around from all around us is not traveling through an optic, right? The light that's bouncing around in your environment in the forest, right, when you're hunting and using your rifle scope or out shooting, is kind of coming in from all directions, and it's your eyeball that's making sense of all of that, right?
Okay.
So the job of the scope really is to direct that light and present it ideally in a way in which your eye expects it, which is like the real world. It's just magnified. It's a magnified view of that real world. And sometimes that light's just not perfect in a certain way that's coming in, or that light changes. So, everybody sees something different. And, in this, the things that people do care about when they're looking at it through their eye really is just, how much light do I get out? Can I see game early in the morning? Can I see it when the light is dim but also blue? How is that information presented to my eye so that it can process it? And that's very different than, say, a camera and a sensor or something else.
That makes total sense.
But it's all pieces that we can explain the optic to people, in a store trying to make a purchase, right? Of how can I evaluate this one to something else, right? And most people, if you presented wavefront error, they'd start glossing over, right? So,
and we kind of land on the big three just to make it easier to explain. So if you look at kind of contrast, resolution, glare, some of those components, they're a little bit easier to visualize. So light transmission seems like, I want it as bright as possible. Great example of that is a movie theater. So go to an old school movie theater where it actually projects from the back onto the screen. Mm-hmm. If you're sitting in that theater and the previews start and all the lights are still on, what do they do before the movie starts? They turn off the lights. You're reducing the amount of light that's actually hitting that screen, but because it's coming down from the ceilings, right? Mm-hmm. So it's coming down and essentially acting like glare coming in.
Oh, okay.
The light from the projector is going forward. It's bouncing off of the screen, coming back to your eye. The lights above are cutting through that and acting as glare and washing that image out. When you turn the lights off, there is less light on the screen. So if in terms of transmission, that would be like lowering the light transmission, but you're getting rid of that glare. You're cutting it out. So there is some bad light coming into that scope. Mm-hmm. So, if you're looking at the target this way and the sun is up here, I want the light coming from the deer or the steel target coming straight through. But if I've got the light from the sun coming down, I don't want that bouncing around inside of the scope and washing the image out. We want to cut it out. We actually want it gone. Mm-hmm. So light transmission by itself could be misleading. Be like sitting in the movie theater and turning on a spotlight and shining it on the screen. It's brighter, but you can't see it better.
Yeah, everybody in the movie theater is mad at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. You washed out the image. Mm-hmm. So you use light transmission, that helps. And then you look at contrast, you look at glare reduction, some of those things, and we can kind of diagram those and then show if you get all three of these mastered as a nice, easy Venn diagram, here's the end image that you get. If the resolution's too low, it looks grainy. If the contrast is too high, or if the if the glare is too high, it washes out. And you say, so we cut out the glare, we maximize the resolution. Here's what we do with contrast. Boom, now you've got a nice crisp image. And the light changes throughout the day. Like Dustin touched on one saying, it's kind of blue in the morning. I don't know if you've noticed that before, but sun rises and then well after sunset, it starts looking blue again. But in the middle of the day, everything's bright. But dusk always feels kind of bluish, and maybe sunset feels kind of reddish. All those wavelengths are different, and we need to manage all of them through the scope.
Yeah, you could probably optimize that to work really well with blue light or red light, but you want it to work with all the light.
And what we don't want to do is cut out the things on the end. So you look at the visible spectrum, right? It's kind of this rainbow. Mm-hmm. And you've got different colors on the end. Well, first thing in the morning and last thing at night, you have a different kind of saturation of wavelengths out there. There's some of those are more prevalent than others. Blue is one of those that our eye does not like. So if you go to a Christmas light thing, like in Oregon, we have one where the zoo is all lit up with lights. Look at the blue ones, and they are hard to focus on. Your eye feels like they're blurry. But if you look at a green Christmas light, no problem.
Interesting.
Our eye can use that green light really well. So if your scope or your binocular is cutting out the blue light, your eye already has a hard time seeing that. That's all that's really present first thing in the morning when the deer are moving.
Yeah, convenient.
Your eye doesn't do well with it, and now your scope cuts it out or your binocular cuts it out. So we actually maximize for when is game moving. There's plenty of light at noon.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
So-
interesting. So from a glass quality test and evaluation process, yes, you go through the I'm going to call them generic, but like some of the test criteria, MTF, wave, front runner, strail ratio, and I'm sure others. But that's all just, yes, we'll do those and we'll measure them, but the human eye is the king, and we're going to make it better for that.
Yeah.
That is super interesting. Well, that was definitely technical right out of the gate.
There's no better time to stock your reloading bench and light up your range. With Hornady Get Loaded Plus. New this year, free bullets or free cases when you buy these select Hornady reloading tools. Plus, receive the free hit target impact indicator. Hornady Get Loaded Plus. Free bullets, free cases, free hit target impact indicator. Get loaded and light it up with Hornady Get Loaded Plus. Limitations apply. Visit Hornady.com/getloaded2025 for further details.
We're going to tone things down now. I picked out
Pull
this
back on the
question.
stick, right?
Good. I was thinking Dustin was going to have to answer a lot of questions
Yeah.
if that was the easy layup.
Well, I picked this next one out. It kind of is an easy layup, I think. I don't know. I can't answer it because my answer is like, it looks cool. I don't know. But this is a great question. Came in from Corey Majors. And Corey wrote in, he said, how do you guys test something, or how would you recommend testing something in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe even an hour, say in the store, or you go to Sports and Warehouse, they let you take it outside. If you're trying to find a rifle scope or a binocular, what's some things that you could look for in your first few minutes, or let's say you borrow a buddy's for a hunt or something? What should you look for to say, okay, I got limited time to look through this thing, but I want to make sure my investment is going to be good in the field?
Can I jump in so
Go for
that
it.
I sound smart for 30 seconds before you? No. We do get that question quite a bit. And so rifle scopes and binoculars you may test them slightly differently depending on whether you have a parallax adjustment and some other things. But there are a couple of telltales that are easy for comparison purposes. So one of the things that we use, Dustin was saying our eyeball is the final sensor, and that's how we test stuff. So yeah, we design and get a scope or a binocular or whatever the way that we think it is, but then we physically look through it. And we try to find some of these things. Well, one of the ways that we do that is an Air Force resolution chart. And if you've never seen one of those, we can throw up a graphic. But it's a series of white and black boxes that kind of just get smaller, 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 smaller. And it's an easy way for you to look through an optic, binocular, rifle scope, spotting scope, and just say, at what point do those start to blur together? And so I can see there's a big black box, big white box, but as they get smaller and smaller and smaller, pretty soon the colors kind of bleed over each other, and that's a good resolution check. Well, at retail, things like Glock posters. It's a solid black poster with white lettering on it. You've got white and black, a ton of contrast. So you can focus your binocular on that and then look at the edge where the white and the black come together.
How sharp is that line?
How crisp is that? Because if the colors blend over each other, and we may get into it, but you're bending light through a scope to make things look bigger. The colors tend to try to separate if you don't manage it right. And so you'll get your colors, instead of staying their wavelengths and they're doing like this, if they separate, when they come back together, they may cross over. What that looks like is if you looked at a solid black target, solid white target up against each other, you'll see like a blue or a yellow haze right where they meet. And that's an indicator of how well it's managing that light coming through. So if you see a big purple stripe right down the edge, and then you pick up another optic and you go, hey, it goes straight from black straight to white, that's a great indication of how it's managing some of the color and some of the resolution.
That's interesting. That's a good takeaway.
And an easy one with a binocular, because you can focus in close, is like a dollar bill. You can, or any other chunk, you can go $100 bill, $20 bill, whatever it is, but there's various sizes of type and writing on it. So it's more of a comparative thing. But if you're like, hey, I'm looking at this one and I don't know which one to choose, best to go outside at dusk and dawn and look at what it does.
Go to the store during dusk and dawn.
And see if they'll let you go in the parking lot, right? But if you can't, you will very quickly be able to tell. So between a Glock poster and look at where the two colors meet, and then try to see, just stick a dollar bill or something up on the shelf and step back, focus on it, and then just see what can I read with this one versus that one. And it'll tell you quite a bit.
That's way more sophisticated than younger Seth at the gun shop, I can assure you.
But it gives you a quick, easy comparison. Yeah. And then the last one I look at with any of them is how white does a white background look? So what does that mean to a hunter or a target shooter? If the colors are kind of running together and you look at that Glock poster again, I'm just using that because they're generally at a gun store, go from one bino to the next or one scope to the next. And if one looks kind of cream colored, then that's going to make it tougher to see a mule deer, a solid steel target, some of the things that it's going to start blending in with the background more. Our eye is looking for a throat patch or an ear tip or something, or that white target out there. If it's not reproducing that color, you've lost a bit of that contrast, and now your eye doesn't readily pick it up. And that's a very fast check when you're down to one or two things. Just switch between them, do that, and you'll know real quick which one's better.
That's fantastic. Dustin, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, just say it's a challenge to do. It's a skill set, right?
Sure.
Just we every day looking through this, we get better and better at it. I find it useful. If I go to a store, I'm making a purchase of something. You got to devote some time to it. You can't just throw it up and compare really fast. So, if you can, test out a chair or something while you're there as well. That you
get the camp
do
chair.
Get down and, just really kind of go back and forth. I find it really helpful to have, if you're looking at a particular price point, grab something that's, in same manufacturer's line or something, but is of a different level of quality.
Sure.
Maybe go up to the upper end to kind of look at it. You might be jealous of that optic once you kind of look through it, but that'll help you sort of understand a little bit about some of those differences. When you're comparing one side by side, it can be even harder. The differences are really small, but if you, I really like actually getting a really extremely cheap pair of binos off of Amazon, like $20 or whatever. They're going to be horrible. It really shows you all of those bad things, and you can actually train your eyeballs on that. So I've done that before to be like, this is what it looks like when it's horrible. Now when I'm actually comparing good optics, I can pick out those small details. Now that I know, like, I've seen when it's obvious, right? But yeah, in the store, some of the things that Tim was mentioning, around color, I like to look at color with my natural eye again, right? What is my eye seeing? And then put it up and kind of go back and forth. How is that color shifting? Lights, darks, the colors that matter out in the forest in fall time. How is red leaves going and orange leaves going to look? Especially, how does white and black look like? And also do that from the center of that optic as well as at the edge. So move around and kind of point around at the same object, but look at the center versus the edge. Yep. As you pay more for optics and you look at more of a premium optic, like the binoculars in our line, for instance, like a Pro Guide, right? That's going to have a lot more clarity, a lot more true color, a lot better focus of that various different wavelengths of light further out at the edge.
Where in my opinion, matters a ton.
Yes, right. And then also, try to relax your eyes. This is a little bit of a mental thing. Our eyes work hard naturally to, sort of squint and to look closer and further. When you spend a lot of time behind observation optics, you can start to tell really, how much your eye is having to work when that optic is of a lesser quality or you're not getting some of those things. Unfortunately, that takes a lot of time, but in a store, in a quicker type of thing, try to just think relaxing and try to notice, pay attention to your body more than the optic. How much is your eye having to work to kind of be behind that optic when you put it up?
That's a good point.
And when you look at something closer versus farther away as well. So that's a really important piece. You'll pay for a lot of that when you're behind optics and glassing for a long time.
You get a migraine.
You're like, and you're like, man, it's really either nice to have what I paid for here, and I can use this for my lifetime, or man, I'll sell this off to my buddy, and I'll use that to go buy
sabotage him. Yeah. Well, that's a good point, though. I feel like the human eye is kind of like an autofocus on a camera. You get somebody's DSLR, you have no idea how to use it, and they say, it's on auto, it's fine. and you push the shutter button, and it and it focuses it up, and then it takes the picture. I feel like your eye wants to do that. So you're looking through binoculars, and it's doing the autofocus, and you do that for 4 hours while you're glassing for mule deer. And
your eyes are just working.
Yeah,
right?
you're cross-eyed.
As you focus, right, all those muscles in your eye are just working back and forth. So if you're able to have that optic, and you have a larger depth of field or depth of focus within that, that's one thing I like to look in a store, in the middle of the store, focus on that, and then, how well can I focus my eye on the back wall? Does it feel hard? Is it blurry? Or can I really easily kind of look at different distances? And that tells me how much focal depth do I have in that optic, and that'll be something that you just you pay more for that type of feature.
Yeah.
And the coatings on the lenses that give you that true color and everything else, right? You're just presenting as best as you can. It should feel as natural as possible.
Got it.
Yep. Again, back to that first question, you're trying to get it like, how does my eye kind of perceive this naturally?
Great answers, guys. That was perfect. Next question in from Braden Current. Good afternoon, guys. I love the podcast. It helped me get started in reloading and has provided valuable information. He wants to know the following. I want to know the following. This is a great question. Why can't laser range-finding binoculars also have the highest quality of glass? So what he's referencing is, I think, something we've all experienced. You get the laser range-finding binocular, and you look through it and compare it to the non-range-finding version, and the glass just doesn't seem quite as crisp and clear. What's going on there?
Yeah, there's a lot more complexity of things that are happening within a range-finding binocular. It's something that we've worked quite a bit on just in our BX4 range. If you look at that binocular and compare it to others, you will see some of the things that we've just been talking about in terms of one classic thing is I look through it, and if you look through one channel, typically the one that's sending and receiving that laser, it will have a bunch of other prisms and coatings and things to be able to send out that light that's invisible, bring it back in, and then put it to the sensor, but not necessarily, it is dividing and filtering out light of different wavelengths.
Okay.
And what that will look like is typically it will chop off, or it will kind of look blue sometimes, just to be able to inject a reddish kind of display. So you need to bring out the red because you're going to pump more red in from one side for that display. So that right side will look kind of blue, and you look with your left eye, and it's typically more like a classic binocular because it doesn't have that. But both eyes are integrating that together. They're bringing both of those images together. And
interesting.
And so it's just that complexity of those additional things. You have to do other things with coatings like that to be able to divide that light, recombine it. It's like shuffling a deck of cards when you're bringing it back in. So it takes a lot to be able to do that well. And so again, like back to the BX4 range, I think when you look through that, we've worked really hard to try to minimize that difference between one channel to the other. And spend the money where it counts, which is on those coatings, on the quality of those additional prisms that are in there to do that type of work. And that's something that as you compare different laser range-finding binoculars, you will see that difference.
I think
more, right, than others even. I think it's easier to compare, like in the store, right, than even a standard pair of binos.
Sure.
So you can kind of get, as close as you can. You'll never be perfect kind of at that upper end. But man, we really strive really hard to get it right there, right to where it's like, I can kind of maybe tell a little bit of difference, but man, this is actually a great binocular.
And the convenience of having the rangefinder in there greatly overpowers that.
It outweighs that. And one easy way to kind of visualize that is if you look at a color wheel, like arts and crafts time, and you have the color wheel on there. If you look at where red is located, and then you go directly opposite of that, you're going to see that it's blue. So there's a couple of types of displays that you can put into the channel that you're looking through that has the display. Because when you push the button, something has to tell you how far away it was.
Right.
So we either kind of project that up into the optics. So think of a heads-up display in your car where the speedometer kind of reflects off the windshield. Or you have to physically look through like an old LCD display. Looking through an LCD display cuts out a bunch of light. If we're going to project it up in there, and most people do prefer that, right, because you don't want to cut out a bunch of light transmission, and they like that red look, now you need to reflect red light. So if I'm going to project it from down here up, and then it's going to bounce back to my eye, I need it to reflect some of that red light, or it's going to burn through the battery like crazy. And so you're weighing battery life with display brightness. Well, if it's reflecting red light coming one way, it's also reflecting it the other. So any natural light coming in through that binocular is actually, on that wavelength, is bouncing off and going back away. That's why you get the bluish, the bluish tint.
Interesting. So I think I'm going to redneck answer his question just based on what you guys said was, why can't laser rangefinding binoculars have the highest quality glass? The reality is they probably do have the highest quality of glass, but to get that image displayed through that, in that barrel, that is where the sacrifice is made. So the fact that you guys can produce a product that still is incredibly clear is a testament to how high quality the glass actually is.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say even it exceeds the quality of a standard bino.
That's-
Because you're having to do so much more.
That's pretty neat.
To be able to do that. Yeah.
The high-speed 3-in-1 power case trimmer keeps up with your need for speed. Trimming, chamfering, and deburring 25 cases a minute. Built to handle a rush without compromising on precision. The ultimate tool for high-volume loaders. Set trim length quickly with macro adjustments and fine-tune with the Click Adjust micro dial. The high-speed 3-in-1 power case trimmer from Hornady.
Next guy, we got Mike. I'm going to call him Big Mike because his email is Big300Norma. So Mike writes in, he's got a couple questions, and the one I want to start off with, I think is going to be easy for you guys to dispel quickly. But why are the numbers on a parallax adjustment, like a side parallax focus, why are the numbers on the parallax adjustment always off? And we got that question from a bunch of people, but I just picked Mike's here. So you got parallax, it says 100, you dial it to 100, you dial it to 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. But if you really took the time to adjust for parallax, you'd find that it doesn't always line up with exactly what is listed on the dial. What's up?
Short answer, that's not the only control that's on the scope. And then Dustin can correct me here, but as soon as you start to change your diopter, which is essentially made to focus on the reticle, right? We all have different vision. We're focusing on something, whether it's front, first focal or second focal, front or rear. This adjustment on the back is really intended to help you focus on that reticle.
Yep, the diopter, is I think it's called.
Yep, the diopter adjustment. Yep. And so once you adjust this, you're changing everything in the scope slightly. So the overall, magnification, a bunch of things change. So there's no way to get this perfect unless we all have exactly the same vision. So as a general statement, this has been a you can't win either way type of a situation for us. So if you don't have rough reference marks, so you can look down and glance and go, okay, I'm set at 250. That's good for hunting. It'll be I have some mark on here that looks about right. If there's no markings, which way do I turn it when I'm shooting farther? How do I know if I'm even close? But as soon as we put numbers on there, hunters, shooters, we're creatures of precision, right? Well, if I'm going to put it there, that should be right. As soon as I do this, that's no longer right. Now it's there, and we need to adjust on all that. So if they think of them as reference marks, I know I need to go this way for a farther shot, and I need to come in this way for a shorter distance. That's a better way of looking at it. We've tried both. We just had the close focus distance and infinity, and then it was, hey, put some numbers on it. Give me some kind of a reference at least.
Yeah.
Then you put a reference on, and my brain naturally does the exact same thing. If it doesn't mean 200, why does it say 200?
Yeah, well, that's a good answer.
On a perfect setting, right at the right at the factory setting, it probably does.
Okay.
What did I miss, Dustin?
Yeah, I think exactly that. It is set and calibrated at a specific diopter setting, which is kind of like your normal one, or where most people are kind of at. So you're, again, back to your individual eyeball, right? You're setting this up to match to your eyeball, and then you're adjusting that. So it is depending on where you're at, some people will have that match up just because where that diopter setting is.
Okay.
And then if you have more vision correction, you need that diopter setting to be backed out or pushed kind of all the way in, you will be slightly different on it. The other thing is also changing lighting conditions. So, we were shooting out earlier today and doing some testing, and we had a lot of mirage, right? And we're shooting down prone, close to the ground, where you generally get more.
Thank God it was humid out today.
That's right. Yeah,
and hot. Yeah.
It was a great testing for exactly this question.
Okay.
So when I was behind the scope, a lot of people ask kind of, they talk about this as being kind of a focus wheel, or, and yes, it does focus kind of that image for you back at your eye of what you're looking at. But it's a parallax adjustment. And a parallax adjustment, what it does is it makes sure that that reticle is on the same plane as the image coming in there. If you have parallax in a scope, how that will kind of present is when your eye is behind that scope and you kind of move around within the eye box. You're looking around. What you'll see is that the image out there will be static, but your aiming point can kind of have a little bit of movement to it. And so when we were out there today with the different lighting conditions, I was setting this and basically moving my head around a little bit and tuning that to where that basically is moving, and then it just kind of stops. And that wasn't necessarily where it was the clearest image that I was seeing out there, right? So I was actually correcting for that parallax, but it wasn't necessarily the clearest at the target. And so a lot of that is coming because the heat that was coming off that type of mirage is bending that light in different ways, and it's changing, right? That mirage is boiling up. And so, we were shooting at a particular target, and I looked at it, and I'm like, all right, I'm a little bit off of that one or something, but I would basically set it, right? We have a 400-yard target, or we're shooting out to, 1,000 yards today plus 1,250. Set it kind of for that, and that's a general rule, but then I get behind it and I kind of move my head around and dial that in. It's also a feature of Leupold optics in that generous eye box that you have, in that you can move your eye around quite a bit to see that. A lot of other scopes that are out there of kind of a lesser quality don't give you as much room. And so you might actually get into the eye box and, you move a little bit and the image just goes away.
You get a vignette,
right? You can't actually see what your parallax is like in there a little bit. And so, it's one of the nice things of having, and something that we prioritize is the overall, length that you are or how close your eye is to that optic, and then that generous eye box so that you can be in different positions, but also be able to kind of see that and dial out that parallax to be ultimately more accurate.
Right. Well, good explanation, and I like the idea of using it as a reference. And I think for a lot of us, I'm running up on a PRS stage, and the targets are 500 to 800. Okay, guess I'm setting it at like 700, let's say, and I'll go shoot the stage. It's not going to matter that much. Or if I'm on a hunt, okay, the animals, I'm hunting in an area that's going to be inside of 400 yards. Okay, so I'll set it to 300 and just call it a day. Or you have the option to set down and really dial it in when you're taking those shots. And so using it as a reference point, I think, is important. All right, so Mike's second part of the question, one I thought was really interesting because you guys manufacture stuff. And he had a great question. He says, with Chinese rifle scopes showing up everywhere and their growing popularity, especially in the thermal realm, he mentions, but in their growing popularity, what's the main difference between an optic that's, say, made in China and a rifle scope that you guys make in Beaverton, Oregon? Is it manpower, labor, technology, material? What are some of the differences that you guys see?
If I had to give one word on that, it's experience. It's field savviness. So going through and understanding what are the problems that we're trying to solve for, whether that be temperature swings or atmospherics or recoil, drops, some of those things, having a real life correlation to what you're designing for makes all the difference in the world. And so, we're blessed in that we've been doing the same thing in Beaverton, Oregon for a very long time, and we've been capturing those learnings over and over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get requirements for military contracts, or you call up and say, hey, I had this thing that was going on. It was a little bit wonky. We can dive right into that. The team that designed it is connected to the team that manufactured it, the team that services it, and it's all one big feedback loop.
Right.
As opposed to, hey, I need something I can see through that zooms from 3 to 9 and kind of doesn't wander around when I pull a trigger. Okay. But then it's, hey, it doesn't work very well in low light, and you have to go back and work on it and go back. So it's just that it's the kind of stacking of learnings over and over and over, and you see something that you don't like, and so I walk back to Dustin, why is this thing happening? Or why is that thing happening? But we're vertically integrated on all that. So from design to the first concept to full testing to field use to the whole service loop is all done in one building under one roof by one group of people. So to me, if I were to look at it that way, it is that constant pursuit of being perfect, and how do we get better every single day? By 750 people that eat, sleep, and breathe this all day, and they're looking for things that are wrong. We're looking to make them fail, not make them pass.
Yep.
So how do I find a flaw in this? Because if I can find it, someone else can, and then how do we fix it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Make it better tomorrow.
Yeah, I think if you look at why there's manufacturing of optics in China, right? One of the biggest reasons is because, hey, labor is cheap there. What's interesting is that is changing, right? In China, people's, jobs are getting better, quality of life are getting better, salaries are going up. But, in those factories, they probably have one little part of maybe building an optic. There's people that, spend maybe very little time, or there's high turnover in that job. They can't even own a firearm, let alone go hunting at all. They have no concept of what this product actually does, right? It's like saying, hey, go make me a car. And you're used to just walking around. Like, what is this? I don't even know what this does. Like, right? And I think what's also interesting in China with kind of the growth of it is that, again, you'll have one company that maybe assembles the optic, but you'll have a bunch of other companies that, make the dial. And then this company kind of makes this part. And, the main one might put it together. And then they're putting together all these different brands, because a lot of those brands that source those products, it's made all in the same assembly line, right? And it's funny to watch people kind of compare optics and kind of know where those are coming from. And you're like, oh, this one's better than this one. And like, actually, they're the exact same thing on the inside. It's just, a different dial on it. Leupold and Stevens, if it goes on a firearm, there's a trigger being pulled. We talk about that being the moment of truth. And if it's involved in that moment of truth, that last little piece of where a trigger's pulled, it's made in our factory. And that's all the way down to aluminum bar coming in one door and scopes going out the other, right?
How cool is that?
That's a pretty unique thing in what we do. And it's such a privilege to continue doing that, and a responsibility to continue manufacturing that. But, we have people in our factory that their parents worked in the factory.
Oh, yeah.
We have people that are Leupold and Stevens family members that currently work, that are multi-generational, still working within the company. I mean, imagine hearing stories from your dad about rifle scopes and being out and going hunting, and now you're running, these CNC machines and kind of turning metal, and you're taking that on now. How much knowledge you built up from your family generational piece that you're applying today? That's a completely different, thing. And so, it's really great to be able to work with all these people that have that passion, within the company, have that experience, and be able to learn from that. As in the position that I'm in, leading engineering, I'm constantly learning from the people that have been on the floor for decades, right? We have people retiring that are plus 40 years, and I learn from them all the time, right? And get better at what I do and how we kind of use that and continue propagating it forward.
Yeah, there's something to be said about American manufacturing, and that's so cool that it's right there.
Keeping that feedback loop captured.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big deal.
All right, we've got some questions from Patrick Stein here. He's got kind of a two-part question. Starts off with, what kind of market research do you guys do to establish a feature set for, let's say, a rifle scope? And then once you establish what the feature set of this new scope is going to be, about how long does it take to bring that product to market?
So maybe just at a high level, we kind of look at a bunch of inputs. So I'd like to say that it's market research. It is a combination of some of the partners that we work with and people that have gone out and hunted themselves. And so you've got this whole group. So it might be the technical service group, the people that are answering the phones. What is the most common question you're getting? What is the most common stumbling point? What are we not explaining well? What may not be as intuitive as we want it to be? And then we've got the professional guide council, people that hunt for a living. So if I just go on the hunting side, we can do the same thing with, pro shooters. But you've got these building blocks. So the tech service team, the product service team, the engineering group, professional end users, all of the feedback that comes in. We take all of that, and then really the product line managers are digesting all of that and coming up with a point of view. I've got all these pieces of the puzzle, and I think that this solution or this method or this change will help us quite a bit. And so it's not just market research. That is one big component of it. But realistically, we talk about that. Dustin mentioned it. It's that field savviness.
Yeah. Well, you guys, when you actually use the products, it helps in a lot of ways.
So what are you hearing from the people that use this stuff, kind of all day, every day? What are you hearing? And then what can we do to get better about that every day? Market research is a big part of it, but it's not the same as saying what will help us sell more. That is a completely different thing than what will make us better.
Yeah, that is a distinctive difference.
And we're highly focused, and I see it here too, highly focused on what makes us better.
Yep.
And that ultimately translates. So that's
Yep.
a big piece of it.
So then once you establish that, how do you get it to market? How long does it take to go from, the Mark V is a relatively new, the Mark IV, the newest line of rifle scopes, to take the Mark IV from, okay, well, here's what we want to do. We got the feature set, tube diameter, all turrets, everything. Make it happen. How long does that take?
Yeah, as long as it takes to get it right.
Okay.
is the base answer.
It's a good answer.
And it kind of is that, right? We've gone through in developing certain products that, the typical cycle is that we'll have an idea of what we want to do, kind of that market research, folds in, and then we'll start building concepts around it. We might doing some prototypes. We might need to develop some technology or something else that we want to apply there. And we'll sometimes do multiple different options of that idea. Our SEL2 dial that was just released on the VX6, it's coming to the VX5 as well for those Gen 2 models. There were multiple ideas from the engineering team about how to solve a simple problem, which is how do I get rid of a tool, an Allen wrench, when I'm out there in the field, right? And this was born out of, us. It's like, oh man, where was that, right? I'm rezeroing something turrets, rezeroing turrets.
Yeah.
I'm have a CDS dial, right, that burned, and I want to swap that out. So I want to swap it out, just an MOA dial to something that has yardage markers, and I'm going out hunting at this elevation and kind of doing this thing. So that was born out of an exact need, and it was applied to that generation of product. But we had a couple different versions of that we had looked at what might make sense the most. Let's actually put that out in the field. Let's try it. Let's go through all the various different testing that we do. Let's run these through impact testing, see how they work, see how parts wear over time, cycling that multiple times way past what you would use generally in a life of an optic. And that does take time.
Yeah.
That can take, years, right, to do that feature as well as a couple others to be able to develop that and eventually get it right. Because
so anywhere from months to years worth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Generally, if I had to ballpark it, it's years, not months.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
We just think about, so that's a great example, VX6 HD, that SZL2 dial. What we don't want to do is test it for 2-3 months in the field and then have somebody call up and say, hey, have you noticed this? But it's already been launched. Yeah. We want to catch all of that. So that the whole idea, the consumer is the reason that any of us are here. And we need to catch it before they do.
Yep.
And so just that iteration of getting it out to trusted people and saying, go use this, go break it, go. What are we not looking for that should be out there?
Beautiful. Great answer. All right.
Utilize your space your way with the modular Hornady Security Square Lock Organizing System. Mount the Square Lock panels anywhere in your home or shop. Then attach the wide assortment of Square Lock accessories to securely store firearms, tools, gear, or any other valuables in any possible configuration. Keep your reloading bench or gun room organized with the Square Lock Modular Organizing System from Hornady Security.
Next question here, kind of a lengthy question, and I'll ask his direct question, but we'll kind of summarize it here because we had a bunch about this topic. This is Jamie Carter. He said, my question is, it's about recoil. I understand that entry-level scopes don't have the same quality of glass and some of the added features that a high-end scope might have, but are entry-level scopes rated to take the recoil punishment as the higher-end scopes? What do you think about something, say, on a 416 Remington Magnum? So, in paraphrasing all that, what goes into considerations, what go into manufacturing a rifle scope for recoil? Because obviously 416 Remington on a lightweight rifle is going to be a big problem. So, do your more affordable scopes have similar recoil handling capability as your higher-end scopes?
Yeah, short answer is that they have all the same specifications. So
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether it's a rifle scope, it's a red dot optic, or anything else that goes in a firearm. It all gets tested to an extremely high standard. And that standard, again, sort of short, is if you were to fire that rifle that it's simulating a couple of times, you would be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And we do it for thousands and thousands of times.
Okay.
And that really, sorts out and is a really extreme test. But what that does is, even over all those times, that ensures that essentially nothing will break in a 416 like that Magnum.
Yeah, giant.
But that also you can simulate any other type of wear, right? So it's not about just breaking or can it survive, but how does that product maybe wear on a really high recoiling rifle? And if you take it way past that extreme, you can be able to tell over an extremely long life of that you basically will not have issues with that product, right? It's really hard to develop optics that have a lifetime warranty to them, right? And it's something that you can pass down to your kids, and they still have that warranty as well, right?
Yeah.
When we stand behind that, that means that we go through lots of things that do break on there, and we fix it, we iterate, and then we find something new, and again. Once we get to that point where it's right, where it's surviving that type of impact, it's surviving a bunch of other tests that we do on the optics, on the dials and everything else, then it's ready.
Then it's ready. So any of your scopes, from the VX Freedom to your VX6 line, they can handle it.
They hit the same baseline test, and actually they need to take recoil in kind of both directions. So one of the things, it wasn't specifically asked here, but what about spring piston air guns? What about like scars that shake back and forth?
Historically hard on optics.
And so if you could mount the scope backwards and shoot it, it'd be hard to look through.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's, you get this recoil is always in the same direction. We feel it in reverse, but it's forward on the scope, right? Because the gun's trying to come out from underneath it. So test them in both directions. We do it to an extreme degree. That same baseline exists across the board. It doesn't matter. So you're going to get different features as you work your way up a line, but you can use any scope on any platform, and as crazy as it sounds, a 416, even a 7-pound, 6-pound 416 is very minor compared to what we test them to.
I like it. Great answer. Here's a question came in from John Alexander. I should have jumped this up front here, so I apologize for that. We're going to go back to the Parallax question. His question was, how do I set it? Do I set the Parallax to a known distance and then set the diopter? Because when I set the diopter first, and then focus the Parallax reading is way off. You'll be able to crush this one. And do I need to set it at a certain magnification?
So in terms of orders of operation, you want to set the diopter first.
Yep.
And what I would encourage on that is do it towards a blank background, even just a piece of paper right in front of you. Like this table works great right now because I can't focus on anything in there. There's not a target that I'm looking at. That is ideal because right now when I glance through it, all I can see is the reticle. But if I stare through this and move it slowly, our eye, as you mentioned, autofocuses. So the best way to do this is to glance through it, look away, let your eye relax. Dustin talked about being in a relaxed state, make an adjustment. Oh, I went too far. That's blurry. So I look back at you, let my eye relax, come back a little bit, getting closer. That feels about right. I'm going to go a little farther. Yep, I went too far. So now right there is where I want that.
Okay, set that and forget it.
Set that, and unless your vision changes or there's multiple shooters, now it's set for me, and I maybe need to check that once every year, 2 years, but it's set for me. This is no longer going to be accurate unless I have the exact prescription. So the numbers on here now, those just became reference points.
Yeah, you explained that perfectly for John, though. Set your diopter, set that to your eye, and then the Parallax readings are going to be what they are, but you should indeed set that diopter first.
And when you're setting the Parallax, I would do that on highest power because it's just more sensitive. You'll see more of the shift. It just
way easier with first focal plane reticles too.
It is, yeah. Just do it where it's most sensitive. So,
all right, Bradley Sutterfield. He has a much easier question than anything technical. He said, if they, meaning you, and the doctor's in, so we're asking the doctor too. If they had only $1,000 to spend on a rifle scope to do anything from hunting to target shooting to long range, what scope in your lineup are you going with? Mm-hmm. And we could be pretty flexible with that 1K because you guys get employee pricing. So
sure. Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, I mean certainly the reason why we have so many various different lines of scopes and everything else is that it's a tool, right? And the age-old saying of, right, you pick the right tool for the right job type of thing. Now, I appreciate the person's question. Hey, I'm spending, right, $1,000 here, right? I'm investing a lot of money in this. I want to try to get the best thing, and how do I cover as much things as I can use that for? Can I move that from a hunting rifle over to, being able to move it over to a competition rifle or something and go shoot PRS maybe, or NRL Hunter, or just go out and, shoot bang targets with my friends out
Yep.
right at the range. So, each scope will have some different features to it because they talked about just sort of, target shooting, maybe some longer range shooting. I might bias my answer a little bit there to make sure that some of those features are included on that. And so, one option that would be really good within that would be a Mark IV HD in a 2.5 to 10.
You do a lot of shooting with that.
Yep.
Right? And that's right in there at that $999 price point. And what you'll get out of that is, a little bit bigger turrets. You're going to get most of what you get out of a Mark V at that price point, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You'll get some target turrets. There'll be a 3-turn turret on there, so you have plenty of adjustment for taking that further out. You'll have a really pretty light optic, so that's one of the biggest differentiators for Leupold optics is that even these large optics like this Mark V, from a weight perspective, is extremely lightweight compared to a competitor optic.
Mm-hmm.
In upwards of, if you were to compare something, it's usually about a pound more for some of our competitors because they're using materials that are a lot heavier. We do that for a couple different reasons. One of which is just it helps with that kind of impact test, but also what it means from this case is that, if you want to put that on a hunting rifle and you need to pack it up a couple thousand feet to the top of the ridge and then back down the other side and then pack it up to the next ridge and back down.
And then still never find any elk.
Yeah. You can do that and you're not being penalized from a weight standpoint. In a 2.5 to 10, you can take a 10 power out to 1,000 yards and be able to shoot it.
For sure.
You don't necessarily need something that's really high power to be able to kind of do that. You're going to have a reticle that gives you a couple different holdovers, so you'll have kind of that. The disadvantage of having potentially a front focal would be that your reticle's a little bit smaller at that lower power, but you'll have a lot of field of view. If you spent a little bit more, you could add some illumination. So when I do that, like on a shooting kind of optic, I will usually always put in and make sure that I have illumination if I'm using it in a hunting scenario, because I can be at a low power and have that illumination on, and it's very easy to see where that aiming point is.
Nice reference.
I'm not going to get it lost in tree limbs and kind of everything else. But yeah, that's a really good choice kind of at that price point.
Tim, what are you looking at?
I think at that price point, then that's probably the best balanced. Looking at that Mark IV, it depends if you're leaning towards shooting versus hunting. The VX5 HD. Now I've bumped up a little bit, so you gave me the courtesy
you get
of
the employee
pricing. But basically, what we kind of do without straying from the question, our black ring or shooting optics, we tend to prioritize somebody that's going to try to go out and shoot more than they carry. It's a lot of shooting. I want oversized turrets. I want oversized adjustment tubes. On the VX side, we try to prioritize weight and slim design for something that you're, for lack of a better, description, you're going to carry more than you shoot.
Yeah,
so
you're hunting.
I need to carry this around, and I want to place a bullet, maybe two, and then the work begins. So on the hunting side, I would lean towards a VX5, VX5 HD. You're going to get slightly smaller adjustments, slightly smaller main tube. You can still shoot out to 1,000 with those. There's plenty of room on them. But if you're going to try to go to over a mile, you need a Mark IV. But yeah, VX5 would be my answer on that, depending hunting versus shooting.
Excellent. Well, related to your answer, I'm going to wrap it up with the questions here, but I do have more of a statement from our friend Mason McNeil. And he said, if it's Leupold, tell them they need to make a VX5 or 6 in the first focal plane. So you heard it from him. So we've been chatting here, answering some questions, and I really appreciate you guys giving us your specific insight. But you're not off the hook yet just because the questions are over, because I've got a question. Now, Dustin, I'm going to let you answer last.
Okay.
So you can really think about this. But with every guest that we have on our podcast, our listeners have asked this question. We actually did a whole podcast about this. We asked a bunch of people in the office, and now we ask everybody that's new to the show, because it's a stupid question. But it's hypothetical, so that's good. So we just have to go on a thought experiment. And in this thought experiment, you could have an infinite amount of firearms, infinite firearm storage in your home. They could be in any configuration: pistol, rifle, short barrel, long barrel, suppressed, any optic, and you have an infinite supply of ammo. But for all of your hunting and shooting for the rest of your days, they got to be chambered in one cartridge. And if you have a favorite Hornady bullet to go along with it, that's great. I wouldn't hold you to that. But if you had to pick one cartridge, Tim, for the rest of your shooting days, competition, hunting, etc., what are you picking?
It's changed a little bit, but it's a 300 Win Mag.
Classic.
Yep.
The Lord's cartridge, as some say.
I can go up to moose. I can go, down to whatever. So it's great for the game side. It's still manageable on recoil. So if I need to go shoot a match somewhere, I'm going to pay for it a little bit, but it's still manageable.
But ammo's free in this hypothetical.
That's the thing. So yeah, for me, 300 Win Mag.
300 Win Mag. Dustin, what are you thinking?
That's a good one because that's where it started when I was in college and went and bought my first Leupold optic. I bought my first rifle. It was a 300 Win Mag because I could go out and man, I've used that to hammer elk, blacktail, mule deer, other things. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good choice. I find myself recently though going a little bit new school, right? So the benefits of working in this industry, right? And I love your question, right? We have an infinite, number of gun safes and rifles and ammo, right? Yes, please. But I've had a chance, right? And have, if I'm going out for elk or other things, I love my 300 PRC for doing work on larger animals. And I've shot, 7 PRC, taking that. I recently took that out hunting. When I kind of looked at it recently, though, right, there's such a broad spectrum of things to be able to kind of use. I've settled around. I used to be a big fan also of 270s, right?
Yeah,
classic. It was a great spot to kind of be, not too big, kind of not too small, and man, it had great performance. And I've looked at and kind of carried more often than not, even over this last weekend, as you mentioned, out elk hunting with my daughter. She hammered one with a 6.5 PRC. And I think that's been, in a lot of scenarios, I find myself sort of reaching for that rifle. I was able to go down to Colorado and, drilled, it was a cow elk hunt, but drilled one at about 450 yards with that and just dropped it.
It's a tough act, even on a cow elk.
It is.
Yep. It's a big ask.
And it was out, doing some work with Colorado. So we were shooting CX bullets. We had to shoot copper out in that area.
Yep.
And just had great performance out there. So it's got, plenty to be able to do work on some bigger animals. It's great to be able to put into the hands. If I throw a brake on it or a suppressor, I had it in my 12-year-old daughter's hands shooting, right? And she can handle it.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I can kind of pass that around. I can use it to, it's great from a deer cartridge standpoint, but yeah, it'll do work.
I like that. It's a good answer. 6.5 PRC that's been the answer for a lot of folks on the show.
It's a tough one to argue.
Of the PRCs, I'm partial to one over the others. However, the 6.5 is so shootable. And I think that answer really stems in the way you outlined it. It comes from shootability.
Yeah.
I saw one question on here that I didn't ask, and I know we're kind of pushing our normal time boundaries. However, I think it's a good question to ask because I have personally seen this. You look at, say, like a VX Freedom 3-9. That thing retails for $250 or whatever it is. It's extremely affordable. And compare that to this old Nikon Pro Staff that I got when I was a kid or something, And in the go back and forth at dusk and dawn, it's not even in the same universe. And I wanted to. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning. We got a question in from Lumberjack 78 about glare and lenses. Talk to us about glare and how you guys control that and why your scopes are so good in those hard to see times.
So quickly, and then maybe Dustin, you can give some more. Glare is one of the number one things that we look at.
Okay.
So when you're going out there, nothing can really ruin the field, the image that you're trying to accomplish faster or better than glare can. So back to that light transmission component. We are doing a lot, and people think that it may be lens coatings. It has a lot to do with actually some of the mechanical design inside and what do you do with light that comes in off axis. But it's one of the very first things that we look at, stray light analysis and what happens to light when it comes through. If it's not good light coming straight through that optic to your eye from the target, we actually want to cut it all out.
And you can do that mechanically, not just through coatings.
You can, if you think of like a muffler on a car.
Yeah.
We can put some baffles and other things in there that when it comes in off axis, which is what glare is, we want it captured. We don't want it transmitted.
Put the Flowmaster Super 40s in there. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I think we go out with a lot of our customers out to our range in Madras, and we kind of host these different events. And one of the big things that we do is get up before dawn. We bring our optics out, lay them all out, put a bunch of our competitor optics out there, and the sun starts coming up, and we have people go through and look at those. And, you kind of hit the VX Freedom right at that starting price point of $299. People look through that, and they're like, this is completely different than anything, even close, like even under $1,000. And sometimes even, high-end European optics that are $multi-$1,000s, it's outperforming those.
Wow.
And then we take that and go put it on a very capable rifle and have them go shoot out to 1,000 yards with a VX Freedom. And they're just blown away. Like, really, this scope can actually do that, right? That comes from, again, all the knowledge we built over time, right? The multiple generations of the VX series that we've had, as well as the Mark scopes. And, Tim had mentioned just as much optically as mechanically, controlling glare performance. If you look inside the objective side here, right, you can actually see some of that. If you look at the inside of the main tube, there's a bunch of lines and sort of like features that are in there. And it's like, why would you thread that? Why would you spend the time? Like, that's not just, there for any reason. That comes from being able to test in our optical lab glare performance. So we're testing, this light coming through, we're putting in glaring light, and we don't want any of that light to come through. So you can kind of see in our test equipment where there are hot spots, where light will reflect off areas of that main tube mechanically, and then we can fix that by features. That comes at a cost, right? That comes at, we're machining this main tube in-house. It's not about just making the outside look pretty, but we're putting a lot of features, doing a lot of detail work inside of there mechanically to manage light. And then the other piece is the actual optics itself, right? We work on a lot of our proprietary coatings that coat multiple sides, so both sides of that glass, and there can be, multiple glass elements inside of a rifle scope. So developing, high-end coatings, putting a lot of coatings on not just the outside to kind of help it be, but on every single side of that glass as it works all the way through. And that makes sure that if there is light that, say, bounces off that and it's kicking back out, it's not necessarily going to reflect back off the lens and then come straight through type of thing as well, right? So there's a lot of detail that we model that through software as we're developing the prescription of the optic, and then we take it into the lab, and then we look at it, and then we take it out in the field, right? And again, how does it look with your eyeball? And there's lots of things that I do to kind of look at glare as well. But, a lot of the times you can kind of look and kind of hold the scope back and see the little stream of light that's coming through back here. And you can see just how crisp and clear the edge of where it's black versus where you start seeing the image through it. If you have light that's kind of shining off and right at the edge of that little piece of light that's going right into the dark part of your eye, and that's creeping in there, that's kind of what glare is. You're getting that extra light, and if you have that, it just washes out the rest of the light that you're trying to look at, right? So, there's a lot of detail that goes into all of those elements, and it that's what you pay for when you buy an optic that gets that. But at the $299 price point, back to kind of the question there, the performance at that lower end, we still do that even in those optics as well, right? We still measure that, and I'd say it, at the high end, people kind of can afford that. The fact that we've been machining these parts for over 100 years, in our factory, we're really good at machining stuff and making sure that we can do it really efficiently. We do that every day, right? Trying to make it more efficient. So we're able to bring that kind of all that knowledge even down to those price points.
That's just fantastic, guys. Well, I suppose I'll let you off the hook. We've had quite an awesome day. We can wrap this thing up. We go grab some dinner. I'm feeling pretty thin in the skin, but I do appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight. And again, thanks, guys, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning into this episode where we got the Q&A questions and answers from the doctor and Tim from Leupold. As you can see, these guys are passionate hunters and shooters themselves, and they work for a company that is equally passionate about the hunting and shooting community. Thanks for listening, We'll catch you on the next one.